So, hello everyone again. My name is Alvin. I will be your moderator for today. And welcome to our webinar to discuss the top security practices to reduce risk, according to our cyber insurance experts. I want to thank all of you for joining. As your trusted IT service provider, we see that it is our responsibility to continuously guide you to your IT practices. And so today, IT can have more of an impact on the well-being of and our future and our organization than ever before. So with new risk, new opportunities, technology is presenting at this current state that we are at right now, we understand that these decisions and accountabilities further impact will be way beyond our IT departments. This topic will hit home to us, and we'll understand that a little bit further as we talk with our experts here as well. And that's what they're here for. So before I pass it on to our presenters, I would like to just give a friendly reminder, maybe a quick house rule for everyone here as well in this session. This will be recorded. It will be shared to you as well. And you are all on mute throughout the whole webinar session, but we will have our chat option enabled for you. And we will leave our Q&A session at the very end of this webinar. And before we wrap up, we will announce the winner of our draw for the Google Nest audio as well. So with that, I would like to pass it on to our first presenter, Roger Bruce, leader of our IT services. Roger will discuss what's going on with the technology right now and what you need to be thinking about as well. Roger, over to you.
Thanks, Alvin, and everyone, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time to spend with us this afternoon. We know there's no shortage of invitations to participate in, and we really value the fact that you're choosing to spend time with us today. Really excited also for you to hear from our cyber insurance expert. He's got some great notes to share with you. Before we get into that, a couple of things that I want to cover off first. We want to start with a poll. Just from your perspective, which of the following area are top IT priorities for you? You can select. We'll give it a second. Great. Okay, so we're seeing results come in. Selfishly, I'm biased. I'm happy to see security top of mind. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. If we could just go to the next slide, please. So before we delve deep into the security topic today, I wanted to talk with you about what we're hearing as we talk to our partners, what we talk to clients throughout North America as kind of the three priorities they're focusing on. First of all, business continuity, top of mind. Perhaps it goes without saying, but if we look at what's going on within the industry, within technology, we're seeing outages from non-traditional sources. Those of us in Canada, September, many of us, including myself, felt the pain of the Rogers outage for a couple of days and how much that could cripple both our personal and professional productivity. So really a lot of focus around business continuity. How do we ensure we've got redundant connectivity, making sure that you're evaluating all single points of failures, like your firewall, et cetera, to make sure if one dies, you've got a way to recover. Managed backup of your data has long been critical, but it's really important to understand managed backup is not a business continuity solution. So we're talking with people about how to have both, a proper managed backup as well as a business continuity solution. Next slide, please. No surprise, it's well documented. Labor shortages, organizations are struggling to find skilled people. In fact, in some cases, they're looking for people just willing to work, and the organization will skill them up. Labor market challenges continue to be an issue. Inflation is putting further pressure on your cost model, further pressure on hiring. You have to pay more, you're spending more for gas, you're spending more for your operating expenses. So there's a lot of focus for improving operational performance and efficiency, getting the most out of the applications you've already invested in. How can you do more with less? And also making sure as we continue to have work from anywhere that's not going away. COVID really helped further the cause of work anywhere. How to ensure that your teams can access the applications, have the level of performance they need to effectively do work every single day, regardless of where they're sitting. So again, a lot of focus on operational performance and efficiency. And finally, next slide, please. Security, topic for today. Work from anywhere has been liberating. It also has brought several challenges. The use of personal devices to access corporate data and accounts. The number of attack surfaces have increased dramatically. Internet of Things, the risk that's associated with sitting at a Starbucks using their Wi-Fi to access company resources. The number of attacks are increasing. If you think you're not vulnerable, you are. The bad actors are not picking and choosing. They're not going after the large enterprises. In fact, if anything, they're doing the opposite. They're going after small, medium, small enterprise businesses because arguably they have less investment to protect themselves and therefore they're being targeted. And your data is so critical to running your business, driving growth. It's your secret sauce. Security is not a spectator sport. You'll hear Adam, our guest speaker, talk about that, and I'll circle back to it later. You must engage and take it seriously. Data is paramount. You've got to be able to protect your data, access the data, and ensure that it's readily accessible and protected. It does present a strategic opportunity within IT, whereas IT typically is talking about deploying new solutions, etc. IT can really move to the forefront around protecting the business and helping evolve and, in fact, enable the organization to be not only fully protected, but mobilized to move forward and really utilize the resources at hand. Back to you, Alvin.
Thank you, Roger. Very insightful as well. So as you all know, we're here for cybersecurity and cyber insurance. But before we dive into that, I want to take a poll to read the room or a virtual room that we have right now. So let's take that poll up right now. So which areas do you believe require the most focus from a security standpoint? Okay, just letting it run its course here. Okay, so it looks like we're pretty close here, right? With endpoint protection seems to be one of the top ones leading their policies and their implementation, also followed up with there as well. So it's just really interesting seeing a gauge from there as well at the same time. So I'm really, really excited to introduce today's keynote on cyber insurance. Like I mentioned, this topic hits home for us. And we've worked with all kind of clients, businesses who have insurance, businesses who didn't have insurance, and were also hit, and becoming more and more common now as well. We have businesses who have cyber insurance policies that they can't get renewed. This is critical for your business to make the right decision when it comes to your cyber security, because the risks are tremendous. If we take a look at the slide here, based on recent survey with over 5,000 IT managers, 66% were hit by ransomware last year. That's up to 37% from 2020. Like Roger said, both the quantity and quality of attacks are increasing. There are more attacks, and those attacks become more successful. 65% of those attacks are resulting to data encryption and loss of system access. And for SMBs facing these attacks, the impacts are so severe that 60% are going out of business within 6 months of attack. So businesses are looking for cyber insurance for some protection against the impact of an attack. Whether you have it or you want cyber insurance or not at all, we need you to be informed on what's going on in the cybersecurity world. And if you're interested in cyber insurance as a risk to mediate that tool, you will need to know what to watch out for. As for our guest speaker will tell you in a moment, cyber insurance is evolving, and there is an onus on you that you may not be aware of. And so I'd like to introduce him now. Today's guest speaker, Adam Velpas from Cowan. Cowan is a client of ours, and we're a client of theirs as well. Like us, Cowan represents choice as they are the leading Canadian broker. Adam has 20 years of insurance industry experience. He previously owned the technology portfolio for Cowan and has moved beyond to bring forward deep insight in cyber insurance. Adam is the president of Insurance Brokers Association of the Hamilton chapter and was a previously board of directors member of the Insurance Brokers Association of Ontario. It's a privilege we have him here with us today. Adam, welcome, and over to you.
Thanks, Alvin, and thanks for that introduction. And a big thank you to Quadbridge for arranging today's seminar. Looking forward to sharing this time with each of you and hopefully deliver some value to your cyber insurance and your cybersecurity practices. At Cowan, we're always happy to support our partners, and supporting Quadbridge and bringing this critical education to you is important to us as well. So just quickly for today's agenda that you'll hear from me, we're quickly going to touch on the legal responsibilities of the executive and board of directors. We'll talk about basics of a cyber insurance policy. We'll talk about what the cyber insurance market looks right now and our issues that we face from the insurance side. And then we'll talk about security practices required to meet the minimum eligibility requirements of our insurance partners today. So let's take it away with our legal responsibilities. You may be aware of this, you may not, but a board of directors essentially has three duties that are important for them to fulfill their obligations with themselves and senior leadership. The first is a duty of care. The duty here is charging the board of directors and leadership with ensuring prudent use and protection of all assets, which includes your data and data of others, whether customer data or vendor data, that's also included. We have a duty of loyalty where we're making sure that we are putting the organization above our own personal interests and that the decisions we make are for the best of the business, which may sometimes run contrary to what our personal feelings are or our personal wishes. Lastly, we all have a duty of obedience. We have to ensure that the business obeys and knows all the applicable laws and regulations where you are operating. Since, for an example, if we have a location in Ontario, but with the World Wide Web, we're able to conduct business also in California, we need to know what those requirements are of our business for where we operate jurisdictionally and around the world. It's important that the board does focus and leadership does focus, as these things come with critical costs and critical requirements that the organization must instill. Again, knowing those territories where you operate is key because each of these territories around the world has different regulations and jurisdictions and acts that we need to know where we're operating. For example, here in Canada, we deal with PIPEDA frequently, the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. We deal with Personal Health Information Protection Act when we deal with confidential health information of individuals. When we operate around the world, we also have to worry about GDPR in Europe and what that looks like to our business if we're operating there, or what it looks like if we have customers from there who are located there and what those implications are on our businesses. Naturally, when we have all these thoughts and considerations, we have a next step. We need to know what to do when an incident occurs or was suspected to have occurred. Do we know how to do this at this time, and are we planned for this? Do we know if we need to inform the officer of the privacy commissioner officer? Do we know what we have to do to notify our customers? So as we look into things, let's talk about what cyber insurance is. So cyber insurance reduces the liability and financial risks resulting from a data breach or a cyber attack. So we are, as a cyber insurance policy, the backstop for when everything fails. When somebody has worked around our safeguards and controls and security procedures, that is what the cyber insurance policy is meant for. It's just the fail-safe that when the system is beat by a person, there is something there to help mitigate those financial risks that would be placed on the company. When we discuss how we rate a policy, rates are very specific to each individual customer and policy holder. Rates are based on the industry you operate in, the geographic areas of operation, again, touching on those jurisdictional acts that you may be subject to. It takes into consideration the size of your business and your security posture. Security posture is becoming very important in the cyber insurance world, as it's a predicator to the likelihood of loss and the claims frequency that we'll talk about later. Now, unlike other insurance products, cyber insurance is relatively new in the world, as most insurance products have been around for over 50 years. Cyber insurance has really gained momentum in the last 5, and it's only been around for about 20 years. So cyber insurance is evolving rapidly and changing frequently. Um, and the important thing about a cyber insurance policy that's different than another insurance policy is a cyber insurance policy typically gives you incident response support that you can access right away when you suspect something or something has occurred. Okay, now we'll move on to what cyber insurance is. So there's generally, sorry, if you could go back one slide, please. So generally, cyber insurance is split into 2 sections. And it's important to note that there's a various array of cyber insurance coverages out in our today's market. Some are simple riders, which will provide a few of these items. And then there's a full policy. And I'm going to spend time talking about what a full cyber insurance policy does and those coverages that they provide to you. So when we look at those numbers there, 90% and 10%, these numbers are just indicating what primarily the cost of claims are distributed to. So we include first party coverages and third party coverages. First party coverages are meant to cover the expenses sustained by your business. So these expenses that could be sustained by your business, which includes breach response services, which includes a lawyer, a public relations firm to line up how to respond and how to look into the incident. It'll include computer forensics to identify how the loss or incident may have occurred. And again, we'll talk about crisis management and public relations. Do we need to set up notification to the general public, and how do we do that? How do we convey what has happened and the severity of it and what we're doing to protect? The most important part here and the most common claim area that we see today is ransomware and cyber extortion. Ransomware, again, just holding your system's ransom for a payment in Bitcoin. The policy is designed to provide coverage for ransomware based on your security posture. So if you have a good posture, higher limits will be available. And if your posturing and your security controls are rather weak, this coverage may not be available at all. But when we do have this coverage, it's important to note that it's meant to pay the ransom, but at the same time, simultaneously work towards seeing if we can avoid paying the ransom and get your data back and your business back and operational. And then if we can't do that, they're continuing to negotiate with that third party that's trying to hold you ransom. And they have the ability and resources to secure, most frequently, Bitcoin to pay for the cyber ransom if it's needed. And if it's not needed, well, it saved everybody the opportunity of trying to find a Bitcoin kiosk to try to go buy Bitcoin to send to somebody else. Now, an important factor here as well under first party coverages is business interruption coverage. When we have a crisis and an incident that's occurred, it's preventing us from conducting our normal business operations. This business interruption coverage is meant to replace that loss of income during that time that the business is not able to function. And finally, under first party coverages, we have cyber crime coverages. These are things such as fund transfers fraud and social engineering. Social engineering is today's modern con man, where they are tricking your organization to voluntarily give up assets that they were not otherwise entitled to. So the most common thing here that we see occurring is request to change banking information. So somebody's obtained the information that you may be doing business with X company. X company is invoicing you, and this company has intercepted those transmissions and interjected themselves. And they ask you to voluntarily change their payment coordinates, and then you send money to that new payment coordinates. Unfortunately, the bad actor in this situation wasn't entitled to the money, but you have voluntarily followed their instructions and sent it out. You're now out those loss of assets or those loss of cash that you sent to that other account, and you still also owe money to that original vendor. So it's important to prepare yourself and to prepare yourself with controls within the organization. Now, the other 10% of claims coverage comes from third party coverages, and these are liability coverages. Those are liabilities that are owed to a third party. So the first one is network and information security liability. That is for when your information, your data is compromised by a third party, and you have shared, information that may not be generally applicable to them, and that was not supposed to be revealed. Next, we include regulatory defense and penalties. So when we do have instances where you have to present and prepare for PIPEDA or GDPR statements and regulations, the policy provides you with a defense and, if applicable, coverages to pay for any applicable penalties that may be assigned to the organization where applicable by law. The policy will also contain coverage for payment card industry fine and assessments. If we are dealing with a business that has payment terminals, you have an agreement with your payment card issuer company that you are going to agree to their terms and conditions. Failure to do that can result in fines and assessments, and these assessments and fines are normally predicated by that payment card industry provider, and they may be an amount that does not make sense to you, but they are dictated by them, and the policy can provide coverage to respond to that. Lastly, we talk about fund transfer liability, and this is because somebody's gained access to your system, and if you had access to another transfer mechanism to send funds on behalf of somebody else, that third party arranges to forward those funds elsewhere, and you're the vulnerable culprit who allowed that to happen. Next, just quickly go and talk about what cybersecurity insurance is not. Cyber insurance is not a replacement for cybersecurity. As I mentioned earlier, it is there for if the best plans fail, and then the cyber insurance policy is welcome. We use it as a risk transfer tool so that, again, you're not left holding the bag for those financial implications and the liabilities that may cause from here. Rates, as we mentioned earlier, are based on your cybersecurity practices and those controls and procedures that you put in place. So again, cybersecurity insurance is not the replacement for cybersecurity, but it is a component for if something were to happen. And eligibility for the cyber insurance products is dependent on continued access to meeting cybersecurity requirements of the organization. As I mentioned, cyber insurance continues to evolve, and as such, they identify claims vectors that they know, and they identify behavioral changes that they can help to instill to prevent further and future losses. Now, I'll take time to talk about the current cybersecurity insurance market. This is a highly lossful market where the insurers are seeing claims just continue to increase, and it's been increasing faster than ever anticipated, especially after we all started working from home. So in the last few years, insurers are now paying out 5 times more in claims than for every $1 they're taking in. So if they collected $1,000 in premiums, they're paying out on average $5,000 in claims, which is obviously untenable for any company to continue to do business. So as a result of these increased claims, the insurers have to look at what they can do to continue to be able to offer coverage, or do they have to consider stopping coverage altogether, which is not in their best interest and is also not in the best interest of our customers. So when they look at things that they can do, they look at rates. We continue to see rates increasing year over year. In the last 3 years, rates are up about 200% at minimum, as insurers are looking to be able to try to keep up with the claims payments that they're making and collect enough money to become profitable in this industry. So for the last year, for example, on average, we've seen rate increases of 15 to 40% for accounts that have great cybersecurity posture and great controls in place. These are clean risks, but in order for the industry to catch up to the total claims payments that are coming out, we're still seeing that minimum of 15, 40% increases. For those people who don't have coverage or cybersecurity posture that are good and they don't have the necessary controls, we're seeing the companies decide to either non-renew their insurance or they're reducing their capacity for insurance. So that available limit that you may have purchased last year for $2 million may only be available $1 million or less now. We're also seeing some insurers leave the marketplace altogether, which means they have no formidable way to figure out how to fix their situation. And they figure it is better for their business operations just to leave the marketplace altogether. What this does is has a critical effect though on the supply of these products. So as we lose a market, that capacity that that market provided now has to be, absorbed by other markets who may or may not be willing to do it. They may be willing to take on those additional risks, but again, for higher premiums than you may have been used to, and it affects as a ripple effect throughout our industry. So what the insurers are also looking at and what they're trying to do now is also include behavioral change, recognizing these tools that can improve your posture and improve the overall profitability of accounts and industry segments so that they're comfortable knowing that they have the best insured risks and they're providing the best insured pricing. Lastly, the insurers are always looking at requirements. Traditionally, we obtained a cyber insurance policy just by completing a quick 2-page application. It didn't go into too much information, and they were able to generate a product and a number that was available for you. Today, those applications are longer and they're detailed, and they're requiring completion of these forms with their IT partners and their IT departments to ensure that the information is accurate and valid and of the correct instance, so that we know when something is asked for, it's been answered truthfully and properly, because we run into a problem when sometimes an assumption's made and maybe we haven't answered that question correctly and maybe it jeopardizes coverage going forward for in the future. The good news I can talk to about this cyber insurance market right now is, in North America, we're starting to see little slivers of maybe some stabilization in the marketplace. So this isn't to say that rate increases are gone altogether, but it's to say rate increases may be into a more natural area that's more bearable. Hearing 15 to 40% rate increases year over year is not something that's tenable to anybody. But if we can see a sliver, it's looking like we may be able to mitigate those rate increases and that the insurers' measures that they've been taking over the past few years are actually coming to fruition now and stabilizing, which will help everybody be able to properly plan and know for their cyber insurance needs where the future is. So as we talk about changing requirements, we've come together with our insurance partners to advise and educate on those requirements that are needed today and those top security practices that put you in the best place to be able to continually to receive cyber insurance if you purchased it or qualify for cyber insurance for the first time. Now, these cybersecurity requirements and practices are split into two solutions here. We're going to talk about the IT security solutions first, and then risk management solutions. IT security solutions, obviously working with your partners and ensuring that these are implemented into your system is a better chance to receive optimal premium rates and continued coverage and best limits available. So the first one that all our insurance partners are looking for today is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication being implemented across the organization for access to systems, for email usage, even for privileged access to control who can get into the files. We know one of our insurance partners has advised that 70% of all the claims that they have had to pay could have been avoided if simply multi-factor authentication was in place. 70% of claims, again, could have been avoided for one simple thing on this list. And as such, it's the most important one at the moment to ensure that A, coverage is available, and B, that you're meeting those requirements that the insurers want to see. Next solution we look for when we underwrite a risk is encryption. Encryption of both your data at rest and encryption of your data while in transit. It's important that the encryption is being utilized for an insurance perspective, as we know, it makes it that if it is intercepted or access is obtained to it, it's harder to identify or get into because it's protected in an additional way. Our insurers are looking for advanced threat protection and endpoint detection tools. They want to know that at the end, all devices are protected and they're actively being monitored to make sure that they're operational and nothing's happened. Next, we have privileged access management. And this is where the insurers are really making sure that those people who have access to certain functions in the company are only provided access with those functions that they need to do to complete their jobs. So that if the receptionist is there, for example, the receptionist doesn't have access to change the core components of the networking system, they can only access the tools they need to complete their portion of the job, which may just be quick access to files and quick access to the phone system. Lastly, our insurers are looking for segregated and tested regular backups. They want to make sure that your backup is removed from your system so it's available if ever needed, and that is tested regularly to make sure that that data is going to be available and it can be recalled when needed. The second component to our solutions that we talk about are risk management solutions. These are solutions that work with your insurance partner to create, or if you already have, to improve, or just to ensure that it is appropriate for today's world. And the number one thing that the insurance partners are looking for is that you have an incident response plan ready and tested, that that if there's a cyber incident to occur, that you have a plan in place to move on and to move forward quickly. So as we know, time is money, and missing moments in a cyber incident cost money. We talked about social engineering. So insurers are looking for callback procedures. This is a control that's put in place that can quickly identify that if we receive instructions to change something, we're calling back the last known person at the company that sent us that instruction to confirm that those instructions were from them. Lastly, right now, we're looking for employee training, continuous training, just to help employees identify phishing activities and passwords, and what a strong password looks like. It's important that we have our employees utilizing strong passwords, as we all know that password of 1234 is probably going to get guessed pretty quickly. Now, these requirements we just spoke about, those are requirements for today. In the future, there's going to be more. These are going to become standard, and we're going to replace these solutions with different things. And those different things may be things such as advanced email filtering to try to avoid some of those phishing incidents that are there ahead. With all that, I'd like to thank you for your time and listening to me, and turn it back over to Roger to continue today's session.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam. And we'll just hold on this slide for just a moment. A couple of comments I want to add. But before I do, folks, a ton of great questions coming in. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, please click on the questions icon on the lower right-hand corner. As we wrap up the webinar today, Alvin will continue his facilitation and address the questions. So just a reminder, great questions coming in. Really seems like Adam's message is resonating with you. So please keep them coming in. A couple of comments that I would add to this slide and really add color to what Adam said. First of all, these are key criteria, as Adam outlined, for how insurance companies are evaluating the risk and what your eligibility and policy would look like from a cyber insurance perspective. But it's also really talking about, sorry, I'm just getting, just a quick check, Adam, can you hear me? Alvin, can you hear me? I'm getting a message that I'm muted. Yep, okay, great. Apologies, folks. But the other key message on this slide is, folks, this is just good business practice. Cyber insurance, being ready to handle an attack is critical. Please don't misunderstand me. But if you implement these things from a business process perspective, you've ensured that your organization is much more resilient and you're ready to just work on a day-to-day basis from a continuity perspective. And several things have changed. As Adam said, it is consistently evolving. he talked about advanced threat protection and endpoint detection tools. The antivirus of 12 months ago, 24 months ago, 5 years ago is no longer good enough. We've worked with a variety of clients over the last 12, 24 months that have been compromised. They were running reputable antivirus solutions. I won't throw out the names, but I'll just say you would all recognize the names. They're industry known, and yet they were compromised because the tools did not include features like AI-driven analysis, a managed threat response in case you are compromised, etc. So it does continue to evolve. Next slide, please. So we can help. Next slide. QuadBridge can certainly help across a number of these areas. We jokingly call the slide that Adam just presented kind of the top 8. And as he said, it will continue to evolve. But from a QuadBridge perspective, we have solutions to align and help you with each of those areas. It's been well discussed on this webinar. The highest impact: implement MFA, implement an employee security education and testing program, make sure the end users are really conversant in the risks and the role they play within the environment. But we can help across each of the areas, each of the top 8 areas that Adam outlined. So before we carry on and I talk to you a bit about the QuadBridge experience and what we've been through, we've got another poll for you. So we've got a graph up. Considering the areas in the graph, we're interested in just your overall sense of where your employees land within their awareness of security, the role they play, the risk areas that you can see in the graph there. Just see the poll results. Fantastic. Everybody's paying attention. I love it. Results coming in. So we've got about 50% of respondents right now are kind of in that 40 to 60% range, which is, I would say, is about bang on, frankly. Thanks so much. Great results there. Good to see the input. So let me talk to you a bit about the path we were on. We sincerely believe in, some would say, eating your own dog food. I would say practicing what you preach. It's a much nicer connotation. So let's talk about our journey. So what you're seeing right now is our security awareness proficiency assessment that we performed about 12 months ago. The red bar represents how our team actually scored, and the gray bar represents what our expectations were. We kind of, ahead of the assessment, we said, here's where we think people will end up. So we sent out a survey to each of our employees. They were asked a number of criteria to really assess their awareness. And you can see across the bottom, there were 7 categories. Awareness around passwords and authentication. Adam talked about password complexity. Incident reporting. Did they know how to report a suspected phishing attack? What happened next? Mobile devices are not as secure as people would think. So how did we fare against that? Social media and the risks that go along with social media. Email security, internet use, human firewall. In other words, what role does the person play in the overall security? And as you can see on this chart, where the gray was our expectation and red is our result, in some areas, like human firewall, I was very pleased that the team really understood far more than I anticipated the role they played in it. In other areas, we knew we had some work to do. So it was a great way to establish a baseline of where our organization was at. Next slide, please. After we completed the SAPA, the next thing we did is we ran some employee security education. So we took the baseline through that initial phishing test. So we sent out a test email to each user. Each email was random in nature, so they couldn't say, hey, we all just got this. It must be suspect. So we ran the initial test. We ran the SAPA to gauge where we're at from a baseline perspective. We then assigned web-based training, monitored completion of that training, and we also implemented some tools such as a fish alert report button. In our Outlook, in our email, if somebody gets an email that looks suspicious, all they need to do is click that button. Our support team is immediately notified for further investigation, and we can advise whether it's a legitimate or not legitimate email. And if it's not legitimate, we can broadcast to our entire team to keep an eye out for this. So some great tools made it really easy for our team to learn, understand. And the key is the ongoing testing. So it cannot be a one-time thing. You must run phishing tests on a recurring basis, because the reality is all it takes is one click and your organization is exposed. So you cannot take your foot off the pedal. Scheduling those recurring tests are critical. Have ongoing training. In fact, that's another criteria that the insurance companies look at is, are you doing training on an ongoing basis to make sure that people are aware? And we also put people in jail. If you click on a phishing test and fail, you go to jail. You've got to do the remedial training until you get out of jail again. In fact, I've spoken with some organizations that not only do they make sure that you go through the training again, they actually remove your domain privileges until you've completed the training again. That's how serious organizations are taking phish testing and education with end users. But what we learn through this is behavioral change is possible. Communication is key to success. I would communicate back to our teams on a monthly and quarterly basis. Here's how we're doing. Here's some areas to focus on. We even had a little fun on our last quarterly meeting. I recognized the people that were the top reporters for clicking on that report button. I also called out, I didn't name names, but I also identified that we had some not so great champions at clicking, and they needed to rectify that as well. So we had a little bit of fun with it as well. Next slide, please. So to summarize, next slide. Ton of great conversation this afternoon. We've got plenty of time left for Q&A, which is fantastic. So key takeaways. Cybersecurity is important. It is not something you can do to the side. It is not something you should focus on each year when it's time to renew your insurance. I promise you, as Adam said, things will continue to evolve as cyber insurance matures, they understand the risks and how the insurance companies and brokers will approach this. Cybersecurity is very, very important and critical, and you need to focus. And as I've said, taking these measures will not only improve your position from a cyber insurance perspective, but will improve the resilience of your organization. Adam talked about the top 8. We call them the top 8, and again, they will continue to evolve. If I can give you a quick anecdote, we had a client about a year ago contact us. They were in the process of renewing their cyber insurance, and they had been told they had 8 days to get MFA implemented. Otherwise, their application would not be approved and would not be renewed. So please, please, please pay attention. Please also make sure that you understand what you're signing. So when you complete those forms, checking off the boxes, if you're not clear, call us. We can help guide you through that process to make sure that you're truthful in your responses in the event that you have a claim. One thing we didn't touch on, folks, the bad actors. We did talk about how the attacks are increasing, the amount of attacks. No organization is safe. The dollars attached to their demands are significant. We're not talking tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and they don't care whether you're a 2-person shop or a 2,000-person shop. The demands are substantial. They do not adjust the demands based on how many employees you have. The other thing I'll note, there is no guarantee. We certainly don't recommend that you put yourself in a position where you have to pay ransomware, but I do want you to know that if you're in that situation and you pay the ransomware, there is no guarantee that they will give you the keys or that the keys they give you will unlock your systems. So please, please, please do what you need to do to keep yourself out of that position. It does continue to evolve, and it will continue to evolve rapidly. At a minimum, you do have a fiduciary responsibility to know what your sensitive data is and making sure that it's protected. You owe that to your organizations. You owe that to your customers and employees where you're storing personal or privileged information. And finally, again, whether you're pursuing cyber insurance or not, these steps are best practices for your business, best practices to build resilience within your organization. And these top 8, these requirements are there for a reason. The insurance companies, Adam talked at length about the discovery and the data, the analysis. There's been a ton of analysis around the data. They know where the risks are and how to mitigate those risks. And with that, Alvin, I believe we're back to you. Oh, pardon me, one more. So what's next? So what's next? Create a security culture and lead it by example. It does need to be driven top down, folks. This can't be done off to the side. It can't be, a nuisance thing. It has to be your leadership team on down must drive this culture, must lead by example, support password complexities. When there's groaning about having to get an MFA code, talk about the importance of why we're doing it. It is much, much more than just getting check boxes on an insurance application. And attack the low-hanging fruit. Get MFA implemented on your key systems if it isn't already. Make sure you train and test your employees on a recurring basis. Employees, 94% of the time, remain the source of a bad actor attack, clicking on a link that they shouldn't have, etc. So please, 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 if you do nothing else, do those 2 things and you will significantly improve your posture. And finally, proactively and regularly assess your current compliancy state versus requirements. Remain in contact with us. Talk with your insurance company. Make sure that if changes are coming, you're ahead of them rather than getting 8 days of notice that you need to do something. I guarantee you it will continue to evolve and will evolve for the right reasons because, again, this is about protecting your business. And now with that, Alvin, back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Adam. Always insightful, always informative. And yes, we're at the question period and a lot of great questions that we have. So we're good on time and let's get to it. So the first question we have here from Marilyn, it's actually a 2-parter. So I'll get to the first part here. So we've tried to get cyber insurance, but as an international organization, the insurance company denied us as we do not have full control of our IT systems, as some of it is held at the head office abroad. What does your insurance company cover organizations like ours? The second part, just to clarify that from Sid as well, is that we are part of a federated organization which uses several services from parent organizations, but these services are treated as any others from any other vendor.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for the question, Marilyn and Sid. Looking at it just quickly from a high level scope here, we do constantly see when we have services provided from parent organizations overseas that it is hard to get insurance in place. Again, it depends what those services that you are receiving from the parent organization and what kind of segregation is between the two. Is there a clear and direct channel that only your organization has, or is there more to it where it's a shared service and everybody is all lumped together? So it's important that we, kind of flush that out and see where it is. There are a lot of global companies that run into the same predicament that you're in, where their local jurisdictional requirements want them to get, for example, insurance in Canada for the Canadian operations that, again, they just can't get it because of how intertwined all the systems are around the world. And some of the insurers do suggest that the parent organization be the one who obtains the coverage and then funnels it out from there. But yeah, it's definitely something that a conversation would be warranted to see what kind of segregation is in place, those limiting factors that have prevented you from having insurance before. And again, that's probably as far as I can comment without getting too far into the weeds with yourselves, Marilyn and Sid.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. So question from Stephanie. How are the premiums determined? What criteria is used to determine these premiums? And what are the average annual premiums we look at?
So good question again. Premiums are determined based upon the responses in the application and your cybersecurity posture. So it's hard to give you a range of premiums, but typically for a small organization, with a few employees making 50 to $100,000 a year. You probably look at premiums again, depending on the limit that you choose, starting somewhere at $750 and quickly escalating from there. Again, based on what you know or what you've asked for, including the limit. If you only wanted a limit of say $250,000, it's going to be a lot closer to the $750 premium. Then it may be higher. But again, depending on the complexity of your organization, your security posture, and those responses to the application, that'll ultimately indicate what kind of premiums you're looking for. And if it is something that, we can see savings doing things one way or another, but it is dependent on those answers and those control mechanisms you have in place.
Excellent. We are rolling with the questions here. So next one from Brian. What are the general or best practices to have in place to meet insurance requirements? Example, what policies should be in place? What are internal plans need to be in place? DRBC, continuity plans or IR plans, information security programs, etc.
So again, yeah, so those best practices that need to be in place really are those 8 things that we just went through. Making sure you're using MFA and it's implemented across the organization, encryption of data, again, threat protection, endpoint detection tools, making sure those people have their access limited to what they need access to do their jobs. Again, talking about backups and moving over to those company controls like an incident response plan, continuity plans and incident response plans. The more you have, the better. And depending on the complexity of the organization, we would look for more detail and more in-depth planning. One of the worst things that we run into is a company has a plan, they don't test the plan, they just filed a binder and it's just become a paperweight. So it's actually knowing what is in that plan and how to use it and who's responsible to use the plan. So it's frequently, again, when we have a binder with a great procedure in it, but if we don't know who's to use the procedure and who's to act when, it becomes just a wasted binder of paper. So knowing that the plan's there and it's in place and how to use it is critical. And it helps drive the premium down towards a level that is better than some of the other risks. A control that, constantly that we're looking at that is in place would be a callback procedure that we had spoke about, that if there's a change or an instruction to change something, that we have a mechanism that doesn't just go ahead and just make the change, that we're calling back that last person that we knew at that company to confirm that that's come through and it's a valid change. That person may not always be the person that's now responsible for that confirmation, but that person may be able to put you towards the other person who can confirm that the change is indeed valid and correct and what we need to move forward with, and then make that change confidently that it was the accurate thing for the company's requests. Then lastly, again, best practice employee training. As Bruce just mentioned there, it is, as Roger just mentioned, it is 94% of 94% of claims are all opened by an employee usually. So it's somebody, having a weak password that gets their account compromised or opening that email. IT systems and security systems are great because they do what they normally need to do. And that human component is normally that weakness that opens the door. People get tired, people don't think sometimes, and it's just that easy that we just click on something that we shouldn't click. So having that recurring employee training, just keep it top of mind and fresh in everybody's mind, helps to prevent and minimize those situations.
Employee training for the win. Next question we have from Yafit. So it was mentioned that rates depend on cybersecurity best practices. So the question is, does cybersecurity vendors are the ones that choose to have the influence over their insurance rates?
It's a hard question to answer directly. Um, Having a strong cybersecurity vendor who is proactive in educating and making sure you stay on top does have an influence in the rating structure and the rates that you'll receive. Receiving something like this, and not just to congratulate Quadbridge on putting together this seminar, it is important that your provider your vendors are engaged and continuing to educate you so you are aware of what's being required. It's not to say necessarily one cybersecurity is vendor is better than another, but the insurers do take account in the background of who's using what and who is receiving the services from what vendor, so that they know if something does happen, that they could quickly go through their portfolios and identify people who may be in a similar situation to potentially protect themselves from seeing that sort of claim situation again across their portfolios. So I know it's a cop out answer there, and it's not a real answer, but security vendor is important for doing best practices and educating.
Thanks, Adam. The next two questions were already answered on chat, but I'll just mention here in case anyone missed it. So, are the employee trainings bilingual? Yes, they are. They are available in both French and English, and other languages, if so, can be available as well. Will we be sharing the slide decks for you to share with key decision makers? Absolutely. We will be sharing the recordings of this webinar, and we can also send a copy of the presentation as well. And you can even reach out to your respective account managers too. More than happy to share anything that's necessary there. So the next question is from Eddie. The way MFAs have become mandatory or close to mandatory when it comes to being insured, what other security solutions do you anticipate being a requirement in the next few years?
So Eddie, the one I really foresee coming and becoming more of a requirement, just like MFA, like you stated, would be email filtering. Email filtering is a nice to have right now, but again, it's something that the insurers are quickly noticing that can prevent a lot of losses from getting through if we can just prevent those phishing emails from getting to the end user in the first place. Phishing training helps us identify, but it doesn't prevent it from going through. And again, just as I said moments ago, it's that accidental click that you've already gone too far on that is opening the door. But if we can avoid the accidental click, well, we've taken away one of those venues to the problem.
I'll squeeze one more question in before we announce the winner of the giveaway. So another great question from Brian. What is your recommendation around organizations going through cyber maturity assessments and pen test? What is the recommended frequency, and how critical are these activities in order to meet insurance requirements?
So again, great question, Brian. This has to go more with the complexity of the organization. For a small organization, obviously, we're not going to go through or ask a lot of companies go through a cyber maturity assessment and a penetration test regularly. But the larger, more complex organizations, the insurers are no hard and fast rule, but we're looking for 3 to 5 years to go through these, unless there's significant changes in the organization, whether there's an acquisition of a new company that you've merged into your company, or something else predicating these changes, like maybe shifting to a new network system that you administer yourself. So naturally, the answer is directed towards your organization and the complexity you see there, and the number of changes that you go through frequently. Um, for large organizations, these assessments and penetration tests are critical and important in helping the insurers understand what you're doing to protect yourselves and identifying your weaknesses. Obviously, the goal of every organization is to avoid a problem. But as we get to larger and more complex organizations, they look to put the onus more on the company that you are doing everything you can. And by being able to prove that you're going through the additional steps of your cyber maturity assessments, of your penetration testing, of tabletop exercises, it shows the insurer partners that it is top of mind, it is something that your attention is directed to, and it is something that you're taking very seriously, which helps them when they create their premiums and when they speak with the actuaries. And when we talk to actuaries on large accounts, they're looking for comfort levels, and knowing you're doing these things gives them a better comfort level and ability to provide you with best terms and services.
I see 3 more questions here. I'll power through a few more here your way, Adam. One from Todd. What criteria can those seeking insurance use to determine what insurance broker is best to use for their cybersecurity insurance?
So criteria for selecting your insurance broker, just like everything, it's going to come down to one, making sure they understand your business, and two, making sure they understand the cyber insurance market. The cyber insurance market is not like the auto insurance market. You want to select or a vendor partner who is involved in the organization or in the insurance market. You're looking for people who've taken some additional learning, and asking them what kind of additional learning or understanding they have. Are they part of global networks? Are they part of improving their educational requirements themselves to make sure that they stay on top of topics? Again, look into who they talk about, how do they learn, and just asking questions like you would pick another insurance broker to do your home and auto insurance, but looking to make sure they understand the complexity of your business and that they do know those topics that you're talking about. Again, cyber insurance can be sold by anybody in, with a property and casualty license across Canada. It does not mean that they know what they're talking about, and just asking them what they know and how they go about it will weed you out pretty quickly to who knows what they're talking about, and understanding your business and how that relates. So I hope that answers your question, Todd.
Awesome. Question from George. I know it's case dependent, but is there a typical turnaround time to generate a cyber insurance policy?
So right now, for a simple non-complex company, you're probably looking at a couple days to a couple weeks to get turnaround to see if you have something. Some of our partners that we do utilize will provide reports back that they'll do a scan on your system to identify vulnerabilities. If a vulnerability is identified, they'll look that they may be able to provide coverage, but they'll provide a 60-day window where they want to make sure the problem was fixed and nothing has occurred after those 60 days to know that the problem was rectified. For a large organization or even a mid-sized organization, you're truly probably looking at 2 to 6 weeks for a typical turnaround time in today's market. Insurers are making sure that they are picking up the answers they're looking for, and they're selecting best-in-class risks for their portfolios, because obviously they're all trying to avoid continuing to sustain losses.
And last question before we announce the giveaway, question from Joey. What are tangible actions for IT managers and directors to take in terms of next steps, assuming they are not on any cyber insurance?
Tangible actions going forward, definitely talking to your insurance providers, and helping them understand what you're looking for and what you're expecting, and then using your insurance provider or your broker partner to identify the next steps or how to talk to the board of directors, for example, of why this is important and how it's going to protect the organization. It's something we look to support and help chief information security officers identify and convey the messaging, because sometimes it does take the words of somebody in addition to the IT or the information security officer to really hit home on the point. Um, so I think talking about it and bringing it up in the organization is important, and using those resources outside that can also help continue the conversation and deliver some value to the organization in general.
Awesome, thanks. And that wraps up our Q&A. I'm sorry if there were more questions since we are over time, but I want to let everyone know here also, Adam has offered to make himself available for consultation as well. If you are interested, please reach out to your sales rep if you would like to arrange anything for you. Thank you again for that, Adam. And we'll actually announce the winner of our giveaway as well. We did it at random draw for the winner of our Google Nest Audio. The winner is Julian Jans. Once again, it's Julian Jans. Congratulations. We will definitely get in contact to send your prize as well. So kudos to you as well. And I want to thank everyone, as we conclude today's webinar, thank you, all of you, for joining. I know this was enlightening. I know this, if it wasn't an eye-opener, I know it definitely was. And if it has been an eye-opener already, I know it definitely validates a lot of the concerns that you have. And special thanks to Adam for taking the time, and for Roger, and for the whole team as well for making this webinar happen. And like I mentioned already at the beginning of the session, we will be sharing the recording of today's session via email following this event. And so keep an eye on that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you again for everyone to join, and have yourself a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.